With the WINN FM News, I am Yulana Weeks. After a couple of years of the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis' saga, there is a call by the International Monetary Fund for the bank to undergo reform. The International Monetary Fund, IMF, identified key deficits within the operations of the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis, and it believes that reforms can help to accelerate financial strength and facilitate banking access, particularly for the most vulnerable people in society. According to the preliminary findings of the IMF staff at the end of its official 2025 mission to St. Kitts and Nevis, non-performing loans at Development Bank has posed great challenges for the financial institution and also liability to the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. Quote, the bank is facing significant challenges due to high non-performing loans and weak profits. Although the bank does not take deposits, it has borrowed from the public and the banking sector and poses a contingent liability to the government. The government and the new management are actively working to address the bank's accountability and financial performance, unquote. The IMF confirmed that the Development Bank is conducting an external audit, which, according to the report, had not been conducted since 2018. Quote, the priority is to thoroughly analyze the bank's financial situation, including its non-performing loans and loss-making loan programs, reassess its financial and social functions, potentially achievable through private lending and targeted social support, and chart the optimal path forward, firmly based on the bank's viability and fiscal prudence. The legal framework around the bank should be revised to significantly strengthen its regulation and supervision, said the IMF report. The IMF mission also sees gaps within the extended banking sector, citing the need for financial soundness to be strengthened at the private banks and credit unions in St. Kitts and Nevis. Quote, banks should continue their efforts to reduce non-performing loans and to meet the prudential requirements for provisions and capital based on their plans submitted to the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank, unquote. Financial education is crucial for economic growth and poverty reduction. Therefore, it was recommended that banks and credit unions improve their financial education campaigns so that customers and clients are fully aware of the standards and requirements. Quote, the bank's efforts to improve the financial education of their potential clients are welcome and should be potentially joined with public resources. This is especially important amid the rapid credit growth and the Regional Credit Bureau becoming more operational. In addition, the regulation and oversight of credit unions by the Financial Services Regulatory Commission has room for improvement, particularly in the areas of lending standards, provisioning requirements, and supervisory actions. Efforts to enhance the effectiveness of the anti-money laundering and countering financing of terrorism framework should continue, unquote. Meanwhile, it may take several years to remedy the institutional problems at the Development Bank of St. Kitts and Nevis. A merger of short-term and long-term policies and initiatives on the part of the bank's leadership and the government could help to restore the institution to financial stability. The Ministry of Agriculture St. Kitts has been upgrading its facilities, including the fisheries complexes, the feed storage area, and the markets, aimed at boosting production. However, there is a concern that the market spaces are not being adequately utilized by vendors. According to Miguel Fleming, a permanent secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture, the ministry will be putting different measures in place to draw vendors and customers back to the market, like in days of old.
We also have to look at the fact that, there's literally no parking at the Bastia Public Market. Yes. But we have started to look at ways in which we can increase traffic to the public market. I believe once vendors know for sure that once they go in the public market, they'll be able to get their produce sold, they'll be willing to stay in the market and come back to the market. So currently that is not happening, but we have started a discussion looking at allowing persons to actually drive into the market. You pull off for a few minutes, buy your produce, and then you can leave. And we're also looking at, on our website, by giving persons the opportunity to now order their produce and just drive across by the public market and pick up your produce. And we also want to reach out to a number of organizations who have, a large workforce, and we come together and have a calendar from now until the end of the year where we'll go together as a group to support the local market.
Some consumers shy away from purchasing their produce from market vendors because prices are typically higher than those at the supermarkets due to the labor. And for some others, a one-stop shopping spree is much more convenient for them.
A number of things that we're working on, because in order for persons to buy local, they must be able to come to the market to buy local, right? Because a lot of the produce are still sold at the supermarkets. A lot of shoppers purchase at the supermarket, but we want to get them to the vendors so they can buy local.
Markets can be a good showcase for vendors, but they have their drawbacks. At the Agri-Strip at Pond Road in particular, its smooth functioning is somewhat dependent on the weather. One vendor told WINN FM though our market may be open, no matter the weather, bad weather tends to affect her sales because it drives the customers away. Additionally, from a more physical standpoint, she said that setting up stalls and packing away at the end of each day could become very tiring and take a toll on the body. In a recent interview with Nicole Tyson on I'm Making It Happen, Minister of Agriculture Samal Duggins said apart from achieving economic gains and food security, the Ministry and Department of Agriculture is promoting a healthier nation.
We talk about the economics, we talk about food security, but as a component of food security is also nutrition security, and that's a critical component. And so we talk about food from the idea of having food, right, but the quality of the food is also important, because you could have food that is not as nutritious as it should be, and that also poses health challenges as well as other challenges for our people. As we've seen recently, the NCDs are on a rise in the region, and we need to control that. Agriculture, NCDs, non-communicable diseases, so diabetes and the hypertensions and these type of diseases that we recognize that are killing our people more recently, more than anything else. Agriculture is one fundamental aspect of how we can combat the incidence of NCDs.
The High Command of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force took part in a meaningful community walkthrough with officers of Division C, Nevis, in Stony Grove, Ramsbury and Craddock Road. The officers had the opportunity to engage with residents, listen to their concerns and discuss how they can best address them. The team of officers in the walkthrough included the Commissioner of Police, James Sutton, Assistant Commissioners Dr. MacArthur Brown, Andrew Mitchell and Travis Rogers, Superintendent Alonzo Carty, Force Chaplain Erickson Cumberbatch, Force Personnel Officer Eartha Carey, Force Finance Officer Katia Laws, and other Division C police officers. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force says it will continue to prioritize community policing as it works together with the community to build safer and stronger neighborhoods. Meanwhile, another outreach initiative was held last week. The National Intervention Team, NIT, made a triumphant return to high schools across St. Kitts and visited the Sky Academy, Sadler's Secondary School, Keon High School, Washington Archibald High School, and Virgils High School, where they engaged with the students and teachers. In a collaborative effort between the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force, the Teens and Police Service, the Ministry of National Security, and the Ministry of Education, they aim to foster a stronger bond between the youth and law enforcement. The Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force says the enthusiasm and warm reception from both the students and educators was truly inspiring. Together we are building bridges and creating a brighter future for our communities. Regionally,
to other news, Commissioner of the Independent Commission of Investigations, Hugh Faulkner, is calling for a review of internal processes by law enforcement bodies. It comes as the number of police fatal shootings so far this year has almost doubled when compared to the same period in 2024. Since the start of the year, there have been 59 police fatal shootings. That's one per day. Commissioner of the Independent Commission of Investigation, Hugh Faulkner, has expressed concern.
When you do the comparative analysis, last year, 2024, the numbers didn't reach 50 until May.
Mr. Faulkner also commented on the war of words between lobby group Jamaicans for Justice and Commissioner of Police Dr. Kevin Blake over the increase in police fatal shootings so far this year.
I do not believe it's a case of one size fits all. I believe in terms of fatal shooting that there ought to be an obligation on the security forces themselves to review the processes And in many of the cases, in fact, in 2024, 40% of the 189 fatalities occurred under planned police operations. Now, planned police operations, the officers are in control of the entire process. Sorry. The location where they're going, the time they choose to go, how they will access this place, the medical facilities available, the strategies, the obstacles that they'll face. So it's totally under their control.
He didn't stop there.
The officers, while they have a duty to protect the public, they also have a duty to protect themselves. But we're saying with planned police operations, then, and the number of persons on that planned operation would not likely be below what is required to handle a particular situation.
In the meantime, Mr. Faulkner is calling for a review of internal processes.
For the Indicom investigation to be maximized and for the inquiry to be complete, it is essential that the JCF and the law enforcement bodies hasten the process for the acquisition of body-worn cameras. Yes, you'll get statements, but in some instances, the sole potential witness, civilian, is deceased.
The Cabinet will no longer be proceeding with the terms of reference in relation to Auditor General Jaiwanti Ramdas in its investigation into the $2.6 billion understatement in revenue in 2023. According to the Office of the Attorney General, the Cabinet-appointed committee, which was set up on May 7, 2024, to look into what transpired, was also tasked with examining Ramdas's response to public officials, the action taken by her in relation to the understatement, and the facts pertaining to the allegations made by her. The AG's office notes the Privy Council's ruling on January 28th, giving Ramdas the green light to proceed with her judicial review proceedings concerning the state's investigation in relation to her. But it says, during the past 10 months, the committee continued its work in accordance with the unaffected aspects of the terms of reference. The final report has been submitted with respect to the permitted terms of reference, which, according to the AG's office, has, quote, adequately identified the contributing factors to the revenue understatement and provided recommendations to strengthen financial oversight, and will be receiving from the Minister of Finance a note with suggestions and recommendations, end quote. The AG's office says, as such, the court matter between Ramdas, Minister of Finance Coleman Burt, and the Cabinet will no longer inform the issues already addressed by the investigative committee's findings, while incurring further legal costs and judicial time while these proceedings are ongoing. Ramdas's attorney, Anand Ramlogan Senior Counsel, responding to the new developments, says, quote, we are pleased that the government has finally capitulated in this matter. Ms. Ramdas stands tall and proud as an example to all independent public officers. We will carefully assess the terms of the government's concession in this matter to determine whether it amounts to appropriate vindication to her rights, end quote. Ramlogan states that while it addresses the judicial review aspects of her claims, it does not do the same pertaining to Ramdas's claims of breach of her constitutional rights, bullying, intimidation, and harassment. The senior counsel notes that Ramdas sought a declaration that her fundamental right to protection of the law was violated and damages. In this regard, he says, quote, we are interested to know whether the government will also defend that matter all the way to the Privy Council, or whether this concession equally applies to her constitutional claim, end quote. Alicia Boucher, TV6 News.
Internationally,
amid all these tensions with Ukraine, a U.S. official familiar with the matter tells NBC Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered U.S. Cyber Command to halt offensive cyber operations against Russia. We should note this happened before that meeting at the Oval Office on Friday. But explain what this means, why it's happening, and the reaction it's sparking.
Well, from what we can understand is that Pete Hegseth has ordered this halt. A senior Defense Department official declined to comment on this, citing security operation concerns. That being said, we know that cyber security agency housed within the Homeland Department office has said that they're going to continue on with their cybersecurity operations. And we know that President Biden and others have said that Russia remains a global cybersecurity threat. That being said, Democrats are being very critical of the Trump administration for this. Chuck Schumer saying that this is really a gift to Russia, and that President Trump is in some ways so eager to try to please Russia that he's now trying to push back and halt cybersecurity operations and offensives against Russia. We also know that Russia has been seen as a sort of global security threat by a number of other nations as well. That being said, the Trump administration, while not explaining why they're doing this, they have been saying that they're open to opening more diplomatic channels with Russia, including staffing U.S. embassies in Russia, as well as opening up diplomatic ties and initiating talks on the peace talks when it comes to ending the war in Ukraine. So the Trump administration has been very open to wanting to sort of deal with Russia in a way that past administrations, including Republican administrations, have not been doing. So definitely going to keep watching this, Joe and Savannah.
Economists are warning car and grocery prices may rise due to tariffs President Trump could impose tonight. He calls them a negotiation tactic for border security and fentanyl control, but investors fear inflation. Amy Kiley has more.
There are going to be tariffs on Tuesday on Mexico and Canada.
The Commerce Secretary confirms new tariffs are on track to begin around midnight Eastern time tonight. He says a 10% hike on Chinese imports is on the table, on top of last month's increase. Executive orders also call for tariffs on most Canadian and all Mexican goods worth more than $800. The Secretary says the percentage of those duties is unclear. He says the president believes America's neighbors are making progress on border security.
He's sort of thinking about right now how exactly he wants to play it with Mexico and Canada, and that is a fluid situation.
U.S. companies are the ones that have to pay the tariffs. The Trump administration downplays how much of that cost they'd pass on to consumers. Many economists say the proposed tariffs could increase prices for goods like shoes, electronics, groceries, and especially vehicles.
If you can buy one before Tuesday, before the tariffs come in and we either shut down or become more expensive, you should go and do it.
Another concern is that Mexico, China, and Canada could impose retaliatory measures.
We will have a strong, unequivocal, and proportional response as Canadians expect.
But some analysts say the new tariffs could be good for the U.S. in the end. The Trump administration says they're leverage.
And the key would be no tariffs. But to get there, there's a negotiation. He's starting that negotiation.
I'm Amy Kiley reporting.